What if you became one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, only to vanish at the peak of your fame? No scandal, no downfall, just gone. That's exactly what happened to Debra Winger, a 3-time Oscar nominee, the fiery talent behind classics like An Officer and a Gentleman in terms of endearment. One day, she was the most sought-after actress in town. The next, she walked away and never looked back. But here's the shocking part. Hollywood didn't reject her. She rejected Hollywood, and the reason? A brutal accident that nearly killed her, a reputation for being difficult, and a fight against sexism so fierce, it changed the industry forever. Stick around because by the end of this video, you'll uncover the truth behind her disappearance and the jaw-dropping way she looks today. Trust me, you won't see this ending coming. Picture this. Cleveland, Ohio, 1955. A girl is born into a strict Jewish family, torn between two names. Mary, her grandparents' traditional choice, and Debra, inspired by a Hollywood starlet. From the start, Debra Winger was caught between two worlds, duty and destiny. Her parents wanted stability. She wanted the stage. But no one could have predicted the nightmare that would force her to choose. At just 17, working a summer job at an amusement park, a freak accident changed everything. A sudden swerve, a violent fall, and then darkness. Waking up in a hospital, paralyzed on one side, her vision gone. Doctors whispered she might never walk again, let alone act. But in that crushing silence, she made a promise to herself. If I survive this, I'm chasing my dream, no matter what. And survive she did, miraculously regaining her sight, her strength, and a ferocity that would define her career. Within years, she'd go from a nobody in a low-budget softcore film to stealing the lead in Urban Cowboy right from under Hollywood's nose. But this is where the real story begins. Because Debra Winger didn't just want fame. She wanted respect. And that made her dangerous. Want to know how she went from hospital bed to Hollywood royalty and why the same fire that made her a star also burned every bridge? Keep watching. The full truth is even wilder than you think. Debra Winger exploded onto the scene with Urban Cowboy, but Hollywood never saw her coming. She wasn't the first choice. She wasn't even the 5th. The studio wanted someone prettier, softer, more compliant. But when Winger walked into that audition, she didn't beg for the role. She took it. Director James Bridges fought tooth and nail to cast her, threatening to quit the film if the studio refused. And when the movie became a smash hit, Winger didn't just play the love interest. She rewrote the rules. Overnight, she became the new American sex symbol, but with a twist. Raw, untamed, and utterly uncontrollable. Hollywood loved her talent, but hated her attitude. Because Winger refused to play the game. When An Officer and a Gentleman paired her with Richard Gere, their chemistry on screen masked a brutal truth. Off camera, they couldn't stand each other. Acting with him was like talking to a wall, she later admitted. But the real war came. With Shirley MacLaine on terms of endearment. Two powerhouse women, both refusing to back down. Stories of their clashes became legend. Winger allegedly farting in MacLaine's face as a power move. The tension was so thick the crew placed bets on who'd walk off set first. Yet somehow, that friction created magic. The film won 5 Oscars, but MacLaine took home Best Actress. As she held her trophy, she smirked. I deserve this. A dig at Winger? Absolutely. But by then, Hollywood was already whispering. She's brilliant. But is she worth the trouble? By the 1990s, Winger was done pretending. She turned down Thelma and Louise, a role that made Gina Davis famous, because it didn't excite her. She rejected Basic Instinct, calling it exploitative trash. While other actresses scrambled for any leading role, Winger only wanted ones that meant something. But Hollywood had no patience for a woman who said no. The scripts dried up. The offers became insults. We need a younger Debra Winger. Then, in 1995, she did the unthinkable. No press conference, no tearful goodbye. She simply left. Moved to a farm in upstate New York, traded red carpets for chicken coops, and vanished. For years, rumors swirled. Had she been blacklisted? Was she sick? The truth was simpler and darker. "I didn't quit Hollywood," she later said. "Hollywood quit me." But here's the twist. Her disappearance made her more iconic than ever. A 2002 documentary, Searching for Debra Winger, exposed how the industry discards women over 40. Actresses like Sharon Stone and Jane Fonda confessed, "We all fear becoming her." Yet Winger, somewhere in her quiet countryside life, was finally free. And when she unexpectedly returned years later, silver-haired, no makeup, radiating a peace she'd never had in Hollywood, the world finally understood. She didn't lose the game. She rewrote it. Debra Winger's story doesn't end with her walking away. It begins there. While Hollywood moved on to the next shiny star, her absence became louder than any performance. In quiet defiance, she proved something radical. You could leave the system and still win. When she finally returned, not for a blockbuster, but for raw indie films and Netflix shows, she carried none of Hollywood's baggage. No desperation to stay young, no fear of fading relevance, just pure, uncompromising artistry. Those thick-framed glasses and silver curls weren't a surrender to age. They were battle armor. And here's the kicker. By refusing to play by their rules, she forced the industry to change. Today, when actresses demand equal pay or complex roles, they're standing on the shoulders of rebels like Winger. Her greatest performance wasn't on screen. It was the life she built off it. A farm, a lasting marriage, the freedom to say no. So the next time Hollywood tries to convince you that fame is everything, remember the woman who gave it all up and found something better. If you admire those who refuse to be broken by the system, hit like and subscribe, because this channel is dedicated to the fighters, the vanish acts, and the ones who rewrite the rules. And Debra? She's not done yet. What if I told you Debra Winger's greatest performance wasn't in any of her Oscar-nominated roles? The truth is, her most powerful act came when the cameras stopped rolling. While Hollywood kept chasing youth and conformity, Winger quietly redefined what success really means. Fast forward to today. That fiery young actress who refused to play by the rules has become something far more interesting, a woman completely at peace with her choices. You'll find her not on movie sets, but teaching acting classes at Harvard. Not chasing fame, but growing vegetables on her farm. And when she does appear, like her recent raw, brilliant performance in The Ranch, it's not out of desperation, but pure artistic hunger. Here's what they never tell you about walking away. Sometimes it's not surrender, it's strategy. Winger proved you could step off the treadmill and still matter. That integrity could outlast fame. And when you see her now, silver-haired, smiling, free, you realize something shocking. She didn't lose Hollywood. Hollywood lost her. If you've ever felt trapped by someone else's expectations, take inspiration from Debra's playbook. Because in a world obsessed with staying relevant, she taught us the most radical lesson of all: how to leave with your soul intact. The lights went down, the curtain closed, and somewhere in New York, Debra Winger was finally winning. The most extraordinary thing about Debra Winger isn't that she left Hollywood at the height of her fame. It's what she found when she walked away. While the industry continued its relentless chase for youth and box office glory, Winger discovered something far more valuable: herself. This wasn't surrender. This wasn't defeat. This was a woman finally taking control of her own narrative. After decades of fighting against an industry that never truly understood her, picture this. It's 1995. Winger has just given what critics call the performance of her career in Shadowlands, earning her third Oscar nomination. Studios are begging for her to star in their next big projects. The world is hers for the taking. And then she's gone. No dramatic farewell tour, no tearful interviews, just a quiet exit, as if she simply stepped off a train before it reached its final destination. For years, Hollywood whispered about what really happened. Was she blacklisted? Was she difficult to work with? Did she have some terrible secret? The truth was far simpler and far more revolutionary. Winger had finally realized that no amount of fame was worth sacrificing her soul. While her peers scrambled for relevance in an industry that discards women over 40, Winger built a different kind of life entirely: a farm in upstate New York. A lasting marriage to actor Arliss Howard. The freedom to wake up without a camera in her face or a studio executive telling her how to behave. In Hollywood, this would be called giving up. In reality, it was the ultimate power move. Because here's what they don't tell you about walking away. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to play the game at all. Years later, when Rosanna Arquette made the documentary Searching for Debra Winger, it wasn't just about one actress's disappearance. It became a damning indictment of how Hollywood treats women of a certain age. Actresses like Sharon Stone and Jane Fonda came forward with their own stories of being pushed aside. But Winger herself? She never appeared in the film. She didn't need to. Her absence spoke louder than any interview ever could. Then, in 2016, something remarkable happened. After 2 decades away, Winger returned, not with some desperate attempt to reclaim her youth, but on her own terms. As the sharp-tongued, complex Maggie in Netflix's The Ranch, she proved something extraordinary. True talent doesn't expire. There was no plastic surgery, no attempts to hide her age, just that same raw, electric presence that made her a star decades earlier. Only now, with the wisdom of someone who had seen the other side of fame and lived to tell the tale. When paparazzi snapped photos of her in 2024 at a film premiere, the internet buzzed with shocked comments. "I barely recognize her," they said, "but look closer. The silver hair, the laugh lines, the thick-rimmed glasses. This wasn't a woman trying to turn back time. This was someone who had made peace with its passage." In an industry obsessed with anti-aging serums and Instagram filters, Winger's refusal to pretend became her most radical act yet. So what really happened to Debra Winger? The heartbreaking truth is this: nothing happened to her. She simply chose herself. In a world that tells women their value decreases with each birthday, Winger proved there's another way. That you can walk away from the spotlight and still shine. That sometimes the most powerful statement isn't what you say, but what you refuse to participate in. As the credits roll on her extraordinary story, here's the final twist. Debra Winger didn't lose Hollywood. Hollywood lost Debra Winger. And somewhere on that quiet farm in New York, with her books and her family and her hard-won peace, the woman they called difficult is finally having the last laugh. The most extraordinary truth about Debra Winger's disappearance from Hollywood isn't that she left. It's that she found herself in the process. While the entertainment industry continued its endless cycle of manufacturing and discarding stars, Winger quietly achieved what so many chase but never attain: genuine freedom. This wasn't a retreat. This wasn't a defeat. This was a warrior, laying down her sword because she'd found more meaningful battles to fight. In the mid-1990s, at the peak of her fame following her 3rd Oscar nomination for Shadowlands, Winger made a decision that stunned Hollywood. She walked away. Not with a dramatic press conference or tearful farewell interview, but with the quiet determination of someone who had simply had enough. The industry that had once worshipped her talent now whispered behind her back, "She's difficult. She's unreasonable. She's throwing it all away." But Winger knew something they didn't. No amount of fame was worth the slow erosion of self that Hollywood demanded. What followed wasn't the tragic downfall the gossip columns predicted, but something far more revolutionary. A life rebuilt on her own terms, a farm in upstate New York, a lasting marriage to actor Arliss Howard, the simple pleasure of mornings without call sheets and afternoons without paparazzi. In an industry that measures worth in box office receipts and magazine covers, Winger's contentment became her most subversive act. The years away from Hollywood weren't empty. They were overflowing. Teaching acting at Harvard, advocating for women's rights, raising her sons away from the glare of celebrity. While her peers scrambled for dwindling roles as mothers and wives, Winger was living those roles authentically, without a script or a camera crew. The industry that had labeled her difficult began to seem increasingly absurd. After all, what's so unreasonable about wanting to be treated with respect? When Rosanna Arquette's 2002 documentary, Searching for Debra Winger, shone a light on Hollywood's systemic ageism, it was Winger's absence that spoke loudest. The film became a rallying cry for actresses fighting against the industry's expiration date for women, with stars like Sharon Stone and Jane Fonda sharing their own experiences of being discarded. Winger, true to form, didn't participate. She didn't need to. Her life had become the most powerful statement she could make. Then, in 2016, after 2 decades away, Winger returned, not with a desperate comeback attempt, but with the quiet confidence of someone who had nothing left to prove. Her role as Maggie in Netflix's The Ranch reminded audiences what they'd been missing, that rare combination of vulnerability and steel that had always defined her performances. There were no attempts to hide her age or conform to Hollywood's beauty standards, just the raw, unfiltered talent that had made her a star in the first place. Recent photos of Winger show a woman utterly at peace with herself, silver hair, laugh lines, and a gaze that suggests she knows something the rest of Hollywood is still struggling to learn. In an industry obsessed with chasing perpetual youth, her refusal to play along has become her most radical performance yet. So what really happened to Debra Winger? The heartbreaking answer is exactly what she wanted to happen. She stepped off the hamster wheel of fame and discovered that the world kept turning. She traded red carpets for real life and found it infinitely more rewarding. In walking away, she achieved what so many in Hollywood never do. She won on her own terms. The final scene of Winger's Hollywood story isn't one of loss, but of liberation. The camera stops rolling, the spotlight fades, and somewhere on her farm, surrounded by the life she chose rather than the one chosen for her, Debra Winger, the woman, not the star, finally takes her bow. Some stars burn out. Some fade away, and some, like Debra Winger, simply step out of the spotlight to shine in ways Hollywood could never understand. So what's the real ending to Debra Winger's story? It's not a tragedy. It's not a surrender. It's something Hollywood rarely sees. A woman who walked away on her own terms. While the industry kept chasing youth and fame, Winger found something far more valuable, herself. No more scripts, no more battles, just a quiet farm, a loving family, and the freedom to grow older without apology. And when she did return, silver-haired, unbothered, and utterly herself, she proved something revolutionary. You don't have to disappear when Hollywood says you should. You can leave when you want. You can come back or not on your terms. So the next time someone tells you that fame is everything, remember Debra Winger. The Oscar nominations, the fiery performances, the legendary feuds, and most of all, the courage to say enough. Because in the end, she didn't lose Hollywood. Hollywood lost her.